2024. Please welcome Mr. John Cleese.
This is my Joe Biden impersonation.
Over here, Mr. President. Right here, Mr. President. Right here, Mr. President. No, right. Oh, right. You can sit over there, Mr. President. There you go. There you go. All right. There's a bottle of water there. We can get you a juice box if you want. How you doing?
I love making fun of very old men. Because it's kind of funny, because I'm older than Biden and I'm older than Trump. Yeah. Very interesting. And you know, this new guy, Tim Waltz, you know, he is younger than Brad Pitt. How about that? Isn't that extraordinary? I like these weird things you get on the internet, like in the last 6 presidential elections, the Republicans only won 1 of the national vote. You see what I mean? 1 out of 6, yet they won 3 out of 6 of the elections. Now that's quite odd, isn't it? You know, it's this wonderful constitution of yours. Known as the best deal we could get out of the slave states. True. Anyway, my love, what do you want me to talk about?
We all can't be as good as Magna Carta. I mean, come on now, we're doing our best.
What?
We learned from Magna Carta. We took that. We went in some directions.
Yes,
you know?
when you stole our language, you've never paid a penny of royalties. Why don't you all speak Polish or something? Right? I mean, English is a very good language now, and we don't get a penny from anyone. What? Very good.
Touche.
Touche, yes. Well, at least you speak a form of English. Well, you're always in a hurry, Americans, so you don't want to say mountain, you say mountain. And you don't want to say accountant, you say accountant, you know, just to speed things along. Mind you, I don't know what you do with the time you saved, but...
We spend it on social media being pissy.
That's right. Oh, dear. Well, it's nice to be here. What do you want me to talk to you about?
Well, a couple of things I'd love to follow up on. Last time we talked, you were working on a new version of Fawlty Towers, but now this is the show.
Yes, what happened was it was suggested to me that we could do a stage version of Fawlty Towers. So we took 3 of the episodes. We took Mrs. Richards and the hotel inspector and the Germans, and we put them into 3 episodes. And it's worked wonderfully well, and it's been quite sort of educational for me, because I knew it was a good show. I knew that the material was basically good, and I was thrilled by how good the people were who were auditioning for the roles. I couldn't believe how we got 2 guys playing Basil, both as good as each other, and they're both absolutely brilliant. We got 2 Sybils, we could have had 3 Manuels, but we got a fantastic cast together. I'd already co-directed the show in Australia before COVID, so there wasn't much to discover about it. But the wonderful thing is, I sat there on the opening night in a theater that was rocking with laughter. And it felt like something from a previous era, you know? You don't hear big crowds of people roaring with laughter, and it was such a wonderful feeling, because I believe laughter is very, very good for us. The reason I started thinking along these lines is I went to the Sarajevo Film Festival years ago, And they told me about the period in the early 90s when Sarajevo was under siege by the Serbs. For 4 years, this little town or city in a valley had Serbs up in the hills. They were lobbing shells down. They were shooting people with telescopic sighted rifles as they crossed the street. 4 years, and incidentally, it wasn't until Clinton did something about it that it got cleared up. But I said to them, how did you get through this? I mean, can you imagine living like that for 4 years? And they said, well, we found an underground car park, and we turned it into a cinema. And in the evenings, when it was dark enough to cross the roads without getting shot, we would all go to the cinema and watch comedy. I'm proud to say a lot of it was Monty Python, but they used to watch it. And then they said that you missed a bit of it. I said to them,
they're recording, so they're fine.
I said, so what happened? They said, well, when we laughed and laughed and laughed for an hour and a half watching the movies, he said, when we came out afterwards, we felt better. But what was interesting is nothing had changed. You see how important this is? The fact that they had been in there laughing had moved them to a different part of their mind where they could cope with that awful situation better. And I was very struck by this. And then doing Comic-Cons, what I learned from doing Comic-Cons is an extraordinary number of people say to me, thank you for helping me through difficult times. A lot of people say, thank you. A lot of people say thanks for the laughs, but a lot of people emphasize thank you for helping me through difficult times. In Seattle, a few weeks ago at a Comic-Con, a woman, I was just signing a picture for her, and she leaned forward to tell me something confidential, and I leaned forward and she said, I want you to know that my husband and I had a daughter who was murdered. And she said, we couldn't sleep. And we discovered that if we played Fawlty Towers, watched an episode or so of Fawlty Towers, after that we could get some sleep. So there's something about laughing that is very healthy and which lifts us into a more positive. You see people coming out of the theater when they've seen the Fawlty Towers stage show, and everyone is in a good mood. Nobody's pretending they're more important than the next people. Do you see what I mean? And I think that we're losing that at the moment because one end of woke is very good. Of course, we want to be kind and inclusive, but there's another end of woke, which is I will get you fired for something you said 7 years ago, which is authoritarian, totalitarian. And it's very nasty to get people fired for things they said 7 years ago because we're supposed to have freedom of speech. You must never, ever, mustn't allow people to speak and to encourage violence. That's out. But anything else, you just got to listen. And if you don't agree with someone, all right, you don't agree with them. And that's how it used to work. It used to work until Newt Gingrich, when he was in charge of the House of Representatives, when he said there shall be no fraternizing between the two sides from now on. And when I got here in 1964, can you believe that? I was here for the Johnson Goldwater election in '64. What I admired more than anything was the way that in your country people had friendships across the aisles, and we didn't have it in England. And after Gingrich said, no, you can't be friends with the other side, it's got more and more polarized to the point where, 50% of the nation hate 50% of the nation. Now I'll tell you a joke. Why do the French have so many civil wars? It's so that they can win one now and again. Why do Italian men grow moustaches? And the answer is, it's because they want to look like their mothers. Man walks into a bar, he says to the barman, have you heard the latest Irish story? The barman says, I should warn you, I'm Irish myself. He says, all right, I'll tell it slowly then. Doesn't mean we hate the French, the Italians, or the Irish. It's just teasing. And affectionate teasing is a source of a lot of good fun. But the woke people don't understand affectionate teasing. Because you see, the extraordinary thing about humor is it's always critical. If you wrote a character who was really nice, wise, kind, and generous, he's not going to be funny. You see, it's people who are well below the standard that we require, that we laugh at, like Basil Fawlty. What an awful man. Or W.C. Fields, you know, the man who said, anyone who hates dogs and children can't be all bad. I just think that you've got to realize that all humor is critical, but if it's done in an affectionate way, then that is just fine, and you don't try and get people fired for saying things you disagree with. So I just think that comedy is very, very important at the moment. I think it's very important that we learn what is funny and what is not funny. And I think, let's put it like this, I don't think people who have very little sense of humor, should be allowed to decide what people with a sense of humor are allowed to laugh at.
Amen. Amen.
Amen to that.
Amen. Amen, and pass the ammunition.
Yes. Yes,
We are in America.
Praise God and keep your powder dry.
Absolutely. Before I jump on out and take some wonderful questions from the audience, on behalf of myself and everyone here, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for all your talents and
I
your
have
performances.
done a wonderful, wonderful job.
Yes, you have.
Over the years. I'm always astonished at what an extraordinarily wonderful man I am. The other day I was shaving and I just looked in the mirror and I just thought, you are wonderful. And I fainted, cut my head open at the side here. But yes, I am an extraordinary human being. And I'm very proud of my modesty, too.
As well you should be. All right, let me jump on over here. And like I said, on the X, and whoever asks the first question will get 2 pieces of candy. Let me load up some ammo here.
Oh, I thought people were leaving. Oh,
No. No, it's up here.
All right.
Hey, what's your name?
How do you get 200 Canadians fully dressed to jump into an ice-cold swimming pool? You say, please jump in the pool. Definition of a Scottish gentleman is a man who can play the bagpipes, but who doesn't. Yes, first question.
Hey, what's your name?
Hanan. And the question is there going to be a stage production of The Life of Brian? If so, when?
Yes, that's absolutely right, sir. I've been working on it for a couple of years. I've got a script I like very much, and I think it will probably be the year after next. The problem at the moment is getting theaters. Theaters are full up, and they've all got shows that have run for months and months and months, because most of them are musical. So the big problem is actually getting a theater, but I can tell you it's quite different. I decided that we cannot finish the stage show with a lot of people being crucified, because it was terribly, terribly funny 40 years ago. But, you know, we're used to the idea now. It has no shock value, so I've got rid of that. And I've got a different ending. I've got an ending. I've given Pontius Pilate a wife. She was called Fiona Pilate, and they are known as the co-pilots. It's going to be very hard to make that joke work. And at the very end, his wife, Fiona, who is a Christian and is against crucifixion because it arouses such unpleasant memories, she persuades her husband not to crucify people anymore. So he makes a speech at the end apologizing for having crucified Jesus Christ. He says things like, "Let's face it, mistakes were made." These things are always more complicated than they look, but now we should move towards the sunny uplands, all that bullshit. Anyway, so I'm hoping we'll do that in a couple of years, and I'm very much hoping that the evangelicals will burn the theater down. Because if they do, the show will play forever. Yes, sir. Next question.
Hey, what's your name?
Hi, my name is JT, and I actually have a question for you. A couple of years ago,
Well, I know you've got a question for me. You wouldn't be standing in the fucking line if you didn't have a question. I'm not selling ice cream here.
Anyway, so a couple of years ago, you worked on a project called Starship Titanic with Douglas Adams, and in that game, you played I wanted to know, out of curiosity, was it your idea or Douglas's idea to have you credited as Kim Bread?
That was my idea, but Douglas Adams at that stage was not really very well known, and he was working on Doctor Who, and he knew me a little bit, and he said, "Would I come and do a program?" And I said, "Of course." And I went in for a very, very pleasant afternoon with a lovely actress called Eleanor Braun, and it's quite extraordinary how many people now know that I made an appearance on Doctor Who and pretending that my stage name was Kim Bread. But I'm very glad I did it. I don't think I've received so much recognition for anything before. Something so trivial, apart, of course, from, what's it called? Harry Potter. Harry Potter, I appeared twice in Harry Potter, the first two films, then they got rid of me because Nedley Headless Knickers got nothing to do with the plot, so that was fine. But I was on screen, if you added my two appearances together, for 36 seconds. And yet that is what I am now known for by young people. And thank God that you're a lovely audience, and the reason you're such a nice audience is that there are no young people here. You realize they are awful, aren't they? Sometimes they creep into my performances, and I say to them, I say, if there's any of you here and you're really enjoying the show, do me a favor, don't tell your friends. No, in America's worship of the youth. I remember the only thing that the Duke of Windsor ever said that was funny about America was he said what he really admired about America was the way that parents obeyed their children. Another question, sir, with the man with the are they wings or ears or both? The ears.
Yes. What's your name?
Fine.
My name is Brody Kroll, and as a young person, I fully agree with you.
You know, what an awful lot they are, aren't they?
I'm 18. I'm technically a young person, and I'm fully on board with what you're saying.
Well, the most civilized city I've ever been is Vienna. It's full of concert halls and bookshops and theaters, and I suddenly realized it's because there's no young people in Vienna. What happens is the police go around in the morning collecting them and putting them in vans, and they drive them out to the countryside and release them, you see, so they can get back in time for dinner. And then you can have a nice civilized town with only middle-aged people there, and it's very cultured. And sorry, Mr. Ears, tell me what you want to ask.
Okay, my question is, in your opinion, what was your funniest Monty Python skit?
Cheese shop. Yes, I like the cheese shop because of the relentlessness of it. And when I was writing with Graham, I kept losing confidence. I kept saying to Graham, is this really funny? And there's just a list of cheeses and a list of excuses why they don't have them. And Graham just said, it's funny, go on. I'd write it for a bit more, and then I'd say, are you sure this is funny? Graham would say, hey, it's funny. And when we read it out, there was a complete silence for about a minute, and I was so embarrassed. And then Michael Palin started to laugh, and he absolutely lost it. I'd never seen him do this before, but he laughed so much he fell off his chair onto the floor and just rolled around holding his sides. And that's a very happy memory for me. So that's my favorite.
What's your favorite?
My personal favorite is "'Tis but a scratch."
Yes, that's a good sketch. And that was based on something that actually happened. When Graham and I wrote that sketch, I had told Graham that morning while we were making coffee before we sat down to write, I said to Graham that when I was a schoolboy, my English teacher had told me about a big wrestling match that had taken place in Rome, in that Greco-Roman style when they get very, very entwined with each other. And these two wrestlers had been in this struggling for control and desperately straining against each other, and suddenly there was a snap. And one of the wrestlers' arms are broken. So he was in terrible pain. He immediately, resigned, or whatever the word is, and the referee came over and separated them and sent him off to get his arm mended by a doctor or go get the bone set. And the referee said to the other guy, "You've won," and the other guy was dead. I thought that was very funny. Because this guy's won this very important fight, and he'll never know he's dead. But the teacher who was telling us this said, this proves that if you don't give up, you can't be beaten. I knew that was bullshit when I was 16, So that's why we wrote the sketch. And what I did discover, which I thought was lovely, was that in 1923, there's a big racetrack outside New York. I think it's called Belmont Park, right? And there was this race, and what happened was that just after the race started, one of the jockeys had a heart attack. Had died. But he stayed in the saddle. And his horse won. I mean, think of the odds you could get for that. All right, Ears, you can go away now. You're a young person. Now there's a lady there who looks suspiciously young. How did you get in?
Hey, what's your name?
I'm Tess, and I'm nearly double his age.
What?
I'm nearly double his age.
You're nearly double his age?
Yes.
Good heavens. So you're what, 12? You wait till you're 84, darling. You get a round of applause by breathing.
I was wondering wondering, what was your favorite character to either play or to create?
What was it? Sorry.
What was your favorite character that you either played or
Oh,
created?
the favorite character that I played. Oh, that's interesting. The favorite character that I played. I think, oddly enough, I liked playing Archie in A Fish Called Wanda because it wasn't all comedy. You see, what people don't understand, and some people understand, is that comedy is much, much more difficult than straight acting. Straight acting is perfectly straightforward. You have to make a choice and then be believable. To be funny, you've got to make a choice and be believable and then have comedy technique on the top of that. And a lot of very good straight actors can't do that. They're wonderful straight actors, but they're no good at comedy. And yet everybody thinks somehow that drama is more important than comedy. And yet anybody who can do both will tell you that comedy is much the hardest. And this is reflected all across the culture. I mean, do you realize that Charlie Chaplin never got an Oscar? Can you believe that? He never got an Oscar till he got one of those lifetime ones that they give you just before you die. But this is a fact. Almost all the awards go always to drama because for some reason people think that actors wallowing in negative emotion is more difficult than people trying to make other people laugh. And I'm going to actually write a book about it because I think it's a very interesting subject, why people think that comedy cannot be very important. I once did a Shakespeare with a very cultured director called Jonathan Miller, and somebody asked him why he was like doing comedies, and he said, well, comedy was good enough for Shakespeare, and it was good enough for Mozart, so it's good enough for me. Okay? Thank you.
Question, thank you. Come on up.
Oh, this is good. She's not so young.
Wow.
What? Now, don't tell me you're 17, darling. You're not 17.
What's your name?
Pull yourself together, woman.
Right. So my name. I have a
I'm
name.
not
It
interested
is
in your
Charlotte.
name. I want.
My name
Give
is
me
Charlotte,
your question.
and yes,
Your
my-
name is irrelevant. Now, Mrs. Irrelevant, please tell me your question.
Yes. So
Yes.
the very first thing I ever saw you in when I was but a wee lass was the Great Muppet Caper. And
Yes.
and to this day, your scenes, they're just two very short scenes, are my favorite, and I think have probably shaped my sense of humor for my entire life. So thank you for that. My question is.
Oh, you have a question
I
too.
do.
I thought.
My
I thought you were
question
making a political
is-
statement or
I mean, a
something.
little bit of that too. But my question is, what was it like working with the Muppets? Was it kind of like Monty Python? Was
Oh,
it
it was-
different? Which was wilder?
It was heaven. I love the Muppets. I was a very close friend of Frank Oz, and I knew Jim Henson a little bit. But when they asked me to do it, I was in seventh heaven, and I do a sketch there with Gonzo, where his arms and legs are the wrong length, and we're trying to get them the right. I just loved it so much. But I'll tell you something, because I'm so terrible at anything musical, that they gave me a song to sing, and of course I fucked it up about 3 or 4 times. And eventually I got it right, and I was so proud. I said, "How about that then?" And I patted Kermit on the head. And I suddenly realized that there was Jim Henson being Kermit, and I'm patting him on the knuckles, because those little Muppets are so lifelike that when you act with them, it's like that's who they are. I was very happy. But did you mention the Kipper and the Corpse? No?
No, I was asking like the difference between working with Muppets and working on Monty Python.
All right.
Yeah.
Because you see, when we got no, now that's just silly humor. That's not based on things that happen. It wasn't the case of the Black Knight, but normally you just think of silly things. But when I was doing Fawlty Towers, I used to ask friends who'd been in the business of hotels or restaurants, and I asked a dear fellow called Lehman, Andrew Lehman. He'd been trained at the Savoy. Very smart hotel. And I said to him, Andrew, what was the biggest single problem you had at the Savoy? And he said, getting rid of the stiffs. And it happened quite a lot, apparently. So the problem is, how do you get dead bodies out of a bedroom without scaring the other guests? Reminds me of one of my favorite stories about a Victorian practical joker. And he had a very nice apartment, a very small one, above a famous fish restaurant. And on one occasion, he actually had a heart attack. And they got the ambulance to him, and they ran up to his flat, and they found that they couldn't carry him down the usual stairs because they were too narrow. They couldn't, it was too dangerous so they had to carry him out through the restaurant. And as he was carried out through the restaurant, he lifted himself up on one shoulder and said, "Don't eat the halibut." I do hope that when I have a heart attack, I can come up with a line like that.
Hello, what you got?
Hi, my name is Chuck, and being a living comedic legend that you are, what is the most important lesson
I'm glad you said living. That was strangely reassuring. Thank you.
So what was the most important lesson you've learned as a comedic actor? Because I'm doing my first sketch comedy show next month, and I'm freaking out.
Yes, well, you have to be brave because there are very few experiences in life more humiliating than trying to be funny and failing. And you've got to do it a lot at the beginning, but you just have to keep going and not take it too personally. Because performing in front of an audience will tell you much, much more than any lessons. You know, you can lay general principles out. But if I had to say one particular lesson, I think it is do not always emphasize the obvious word. There's an element of concealment in humor. You have to tread the line between making a joke too obvious, in which case it isn't funny because the audience gets there first, or not making it clear enough, in which case they don't get the joke at all anyway. You see what I mean? So that's the line that you have to tread. Don't make it too obvious, but do make it clear. And I think the most important single thing in comedy is clarity. If the audience doesn't understand what's going on, they won't laugh. They may still enjoy it, but the moment that the moment that they don't understand what's happening, they stop laughing. So I think comedy's got to be very, very clear.
Thanks.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, it's a lemur.
He's a lemur.
Hello,
a lemur named
lemur.
Allie.
Well, I love lemurs. Do you know that it's the only honor that I have? Is that there is a species of lemur in Madagascar that is named after me. Yes, it's called Avahi cleesii, that's its Latin name, or Cleese's woolly lemur. And I'm so proud about that, and I don't want the species to go extinct because it means I go extinct too. What can I do for you, Lima?
I was just wondering, what are some of your favorite things that you have done that you find were very funny that people don't reference as often as, say, they reference Monty Python?
Well, I notice things all the time. I mean, I notice things to do with speech. For example, when I'm traveling on a plane, I'm always puzzled by when the announcement says the captain has turned the seatbelt sign on. Because if somebody's just said the captain has not turned the seat light, it makes perfectly good sense to say, no, the captain has turned. But otherwise, why are you saying has? The most important words are captain, turned on, seatbelt sign. You see what I mean? So why do you emphasize has? The captain has turned on the seatbelt. The temperature in San Francisco is 78 degrees. Why take the most meaningless fucking word in the sentence and emphasize it, although it's the most, you know? And of course, I live a lot in hotels, and it is extraordinary that most hotels aren't very good. And I do get to stay with quite good ones because promoters, you know, put me in 4- or 5-star hotels. And it's quite extraordinary how often they're not very good. The first thing you have to tell when you go to a hotel is it run for the benefit of the guests or for the benefit of the staff? And you find the most hotels are run for the benefit of the staff. You know, as I called the concierge the other day, I wanted recommendations on a restaurant in San Francisco, and they said, oh no, they said they're on their break. You know. So I was in this large hotel, and if anybody wanted to ask the concierge a question, they couldn't because he was on his break. You know, I just think that's so wonderfully hopeless. I remember I was in a hotel in Sacramento, and I thought, there's such a queue at breakfast. I'm going to order breakfast in my room tomorrow. So that night I looked at the internet, and I looked at the menu for the hotel. And I thought, I looked at the breakfast menu, and they had truffled eggs. And I thought, that sounds rather delicious. So I rang them up, and room service, I said, room service. They said, well, it's in-room dining. I said, all right, so if I have breakfast in the morning, I have to dine on my breakfast, do I? You see how stupid that is? But it sounds posher. In-room dining, no, it's fucking room service. It's like you call down and you say, oh, hello, and you want them to say hello. So you could ask them a question, and they don't. They say, hello, this is the X and Y type hotel, and my name is Gloria, and I have an aunt who lives just outside this branch in Rotherham. What can I do for you? They just complicated all. They wanted serious. Anyway, I said, I want truffled eggs at 8:30, and they said, yes, Mr. Cleese, that'll be fine. So at 8:20, I'm in the shower, and the phone goes. And I pick it up, and I say, yes. And they said, you ordered truffled eggs at 8:30. I said, that's right. They said, we don't do them. I said, but they're on the menu. And they said, no, they're not. I said, you don't do them. They said, no, we don't do them. I said, well, I'll have scrambled eggs then, please, you see. So I get out of the shower, I dry myself, and I go and I look at the menu on the internet, and there it is, truffled eggs. And I ring them, and I said, you know, it does say truffled eggs on your menu. And they said, well, that's not our menu. What do you mean it's not your menu? It says the Regis Hotel breakfast menu. I said, yes, but it's a third-party operation, so we don't have anything to do with their menu. They only provide the food. I said, well, why don't you tell them that you don't make truffled eggs? Then it wouldn't. She said, that's not my job. So I give up. And there's a knock on the door, and they brought my scrambled eggs, and I think, oh, this will be all right. And then they hand me the bill, and they have charged me for truffled eggs. It's inexplicable. Did you send all those people away?
Yeah, unfortunately, it is my job to let us know we're just about at time, unfortunately.
But I don't want to stop. I'd rather go on.
All right. Where was that dude? Where was that dude that says, "Am I cut off?" and then walked away? Come back. Yeah. Who is that guy?
Come on, people. Come on, get on.
Who is that guy?
You're keeping everyone waiting. Come on.
All right. Then I'll come.
Hurry up a bit. Hurry up.
All right. What you got?
Hurry up.
Hi, I'm Taylor, and I want to know, you did a docuseries with Elizabeth Hurley called Faces.
Yes.
And it affected me deeply as a young adult, and I want to know how did it affected you and how you view humanity from doing that docuseries.
It's a very good question. It's called The Human Face. We did it. I got the best reviews I've ever got for anything I've ever done in America. It got nominated for an Emmy, but it did not win for the simple reason that it was the same year that 9/11 had happened. So two fantastic documentaries about that. But I learned an enormous amount from doing that program, mainly that what we find sexually attractive in other people is always to do with health. It's always to do with what are the prospects of this person if they produce my children. Do you see what I mean? And if you understand all that, then you understand a great deal about why certain people are considered beautiful or not. That was the single biggest lesson I learned. But it's out there. It's a BBC program, and they haven't managed to lose it yet, which is very good by BBC standards. And it's just called The Human Face. And the show on beauty, which is done with Elizabeth Hurley, is tremendously interesting. One more question, and then
we'll take this young man. Okay. Hey, what's your name?
My name is Alejandro.
Haven't you got someone with funnier ears?
Thank you.
No, you've got very nice ears. You've got a splendid pair of ears there, but they're not very interesting ears.
Oh, okay.
You shouldn't be ashamed of them. I don't mean you should sort of put them in bags or anything like that. It's just they're okay, those ears, but I just would have preferred someone with really more interesting ears.
All right. As a fan of Fawlty Towers, could you tell us some stories about working with Ballard Berkeley and Andrew Sachs, who are two of my other favorite cast members of the show?
Well, I'll tell you one about Ballard Berkeley, the Major. And he was an old-style English gentleman, one of the loveliest, kind, polite, friendly, and funny, and absolutely obsessed with cricket. Absolutely obsessed. And I remember on one occasion I was rehearsing with Prunella Stales, and I was doing the scene with her, rehearsing with her, and he started running around in the backgrounds going like that, which meant that there were 5 Australian wickets had fallen. He was a wonderful one. Andrew, the extraordinary thing about Andrew was that his first language, Manuel's first language, was German. He was born in Berlin, and he was born in 1929 because he was 10 years older than me. And thank God he's Jewish, and they managed to get out in the mid-30s. And he was the perfect English gentleman, but I could never quite believe that his first language was German. And as that was such a boring question,
I have a final question.
You've got a question, all right.
I got a question. Do you want to take a picture with the whole audience?
What?
You want to take a picture with the whole audience?
Yes.
All right, let's do that. All right. Wait. Come towards the stage. Not on the stage, but towards the stage. Want to take a picture of Mr. Cleese and all of you.